Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about the NHL draft, the Cubs and White Sox baseball. We'll be talking the beginnings of NBA free agency, but we will not be talking about Zion Williamson. I can assure you that. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Season is over, but that shouldn't stop you from heading on over to icehogs.com. Get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, sign up for season tickets and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how are you doing?
I am feeling great. Connor Bedard is officially a Blackhawk. And though we knew it was going to happen, the fact that it is officially official, it feels great.
It really does. I had just gotten back into town and we had tickets to go see the Buddy Holly Story musical. And so I was getting ready to walk out the door and I had it on my phone and we were like walking out the door right at the first pick. I'm like, hold on. And my wife's like, you know who they're picking? I'm like, I know who they're picking. I just need to see it to be sure so they don't screw it up. But they got it right. We got Connor Bedard.
They did. And I mean, honestly, I felt 100% confident that it was going to be Connor Bedard. Now, if it was Stan Bowman running the show, maybe I wouldn't be as sure. But I think with Kyle Davidson in charge, a man with a plan, I felt pretty confident in him. Though people might not know it, because apparently when people go out and walk around in Nashville, they don't know who Kyle Davidson is.
To be fair, if he walked around Chicago, there's probably a whole lot of people that wouldn't know who he was.
Oh no, he looks like just a guy. I mean,
he really does. He looks
like a guy.
Yeah, he's just a guy. Like, he's not particularly tall. He's not like unique.
He's not an ex-star, it's not like he's Steve Yzerman or something.
Yeah, like AK is very tall. Like, okay, he's somebody, right? He's same thing. Ryan Poles he's everywhere. You know who Ryan Poles is.
Rick Hahn, you could see those sideburns from a mile away.
But Coyle, he's just a guy. And he's new on the job. So you don't have a lot of access to him. And hockey's, by far and away the least popular of the sports. So yeah, it's understandable. But I mean, that's kind of cool because you get to keep some of the anonymity.
Yeah. And, I think that a lot of people don't really have much of a sample size to look at Kyle Davidson and be like, all right, I recognize his speaking manner, his mannerisms, the way he presents himself. I mean, he's been very public and transparent in Chicago, but remember, this is a rebuilding team. It's not like you got Theo Epstein talking out there. It's not like you have, you mentioned AK, he's very recognizable. He's still very new at this job, Kyle Davidson is. And, if you didn't know him now, you should know him now after that viral video, which I just thought was hilarious, especially the way he carried himself.
Somebody who wishes they did have the anonymity is probably David Reinbacher. I don't know if you saw this. So David Reinbacher was the number 5 overall pick to Montreal. Mm-hmm. And he has gotten thousands of hate mail messages already because people are unhappy that he was chosen.
Yeah, that's just
Like, here's the thing.
don't have a choice.
Was he overdrafted? Absolutely. There was, based on the rankings, it should have been the first 10 picks should have been, forwards. So, but that's not his fault. He just shows up. He plays the best of his ability, and he plays hard, and he answered the questions, and Montreal chose him. Like, it's not his fault. Like, if you're not happy about it, just chill out. Because, if he becomes an elite defenseman, then cool. But, that anger should be towards your front office, not towards the guy. He didn't do anything wrong. Would you want him to come up
No.
there when they called his name, go up there and be like, you fucked up? Nope. Like,
Well,
what is
first
he
of all,
supposed to
Carey
do?
Price didn't get his name right, but that's besides the point.
It's true. But honestly, this draft was weird. I mean, the Blackhawks got the first pick right. After that, it just, everything went weird.
Adam Fantilli, I thought he was a sure lock at number 2, but no, he was passed up, and then the Blue Jackets got him.
Yeah, the Blue Jackets, they couldn't have been happier. They
They had to be jumping for joy.
They were like, we need somebody to mess up, and somebody messed up.
And they probably felt a little screwed after they didn't win the lottery. So they're thinking, man, we could have had Connor Bedard, and now we're going to miss out on Connor Bedard and probably Adam Fantilli, and yet the Ducks, they didn't take him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not crapping on Leo Carlson.
It could be very good.
Yeah, it's just the consensus number 2 guy in this draft was Adam Fantilli. And then the Russian player Mishkov, talent-wise, probably the second most talented player in this draft, behind Connor Bedard.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if Connor Bedard wasn't in this draft, he'd be number 1.
The problem is that Mishkov is signed to the KHL for 3 more years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think teams were worried about that. And he falls to Philadelphia. And I think they just got an absolute steal. Because
yeah, I think so too. He's really talented.
He's really talented. Is he the fastest skater? No. But just the shot and the puck handling, he's just really good. It's funny, like after the Coyotes picked and Mishkov still was on the board, I just texted my friend. I was like, Mishkov to 19, and then literally, like, I could see the bubbles typing, and the Flyers announced that pick, and he's like, and I just get an answer, nope.
Well, I was wondering. I'm like, hey, the Red Wings are a few picks away by the, when he was about to get picked by the Flyers. I'm like, hey, the Red Wings and their strong Russian connection, what if he fell to them? Doesn't that seem like a match made in heaven right there?
Yeah, I still think he's going to come over here earlier than 3 years.
Yeah, I think they can finagle their way out of it.
And he insinuated as much as well, as well. I don't know if they'll buy him out or what, but he'll be over here before that, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, a lot of prospects take time in, whatever league it is, whether it's college or, the AHL or wherever, to develop. But, this is a kid with a ceiling where if he didn't have those rights, he'd be up much sooner than 3 years, right? I mean, like you would assume.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very, very, very few players go right from the draft into the NHL. And this year, we may only get one, Bedard.
Yeah, I don't
and
know about
me-
Fantilli or I don't know.
I mean, isn't Fantilli talking about going back to Michigan?
He could. I mean, I'm curious to
Um,
see. I mean, it's easier said than done. I mean, if you have a chance to start right away in the NHL, wouldn't you want to start your pro career? But I don't know.
Absolutely. It just, depends on where they see you. Like Mishkov is one that I think he possibly could have just come right to the NHL. I mean, he's playing pro hockey as it is at
Right.
a high
Right,
level.
exactly.
But it's funny to read on Twitter some people acting like Bedard is not going to be with the Blackhawks day one.
The only way he's not is if he's sick, injured, or something else that you don't want to say, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, he's going to make the squad. He's the most talented player in this organization. Literally.
By a long shot.
Yeah. I mean, our best prospect, flip a coin, either Reichel or Korchinski, and Connor Bedard is infinitely better than both.
And, and that's saying something because Korchinski, I think he's got a really high ceiling for his position.
Oh, absolutely. I think Reichel does too. I think both guys. I think there's a handful of Blackhawks players that have really high potential, and we're going to see it soon.
Yeah, but I mean, Connor Bedard with his potential. I mean, this is franchise changing. We've said it on the show before. We're going to say it again. It's franchise changing. This was one of the most watched drafts ever. I think it was the most watched draft ever. The ratings were high.
And here's the thing. Does Connor Bedard complete the rebuild? No, clearly not. But does he complete the hardest part of a rebuild, which is getting a superstar? Absolutely.
It's a monumental step in a process that is very, very long. And that's something, too, that I think we have to recalibrate and keep in mind. We can't understate the importance of Connor Bedard and what he means to this franchise. We also can't fail to mention and really remember that we are still in the early stages of a rebuild.
It's funny when you hear like the experts talking about like predictions for his rookie season, and you're just like 45 goals. You're like, oh my God. Like, he's 17 years old right now, and you're predicting that next season he's going to have 45 goals in the NHL. That's I mean, I'm not doubting it, but it's tough to fathom.
That's a tall task. Very tall. I mean, you could be the most talented prospect coming in to ask a 17, 18-year-old rookie in the National Hockey League to score 45 goals. Like you said, not saying he's not capable of it, but that is a tall order.
What's wild is, I mean, this was before you were born, probably. Sidney Crosby. Do you know what he did in his rookie year?
I was born before Crosby was drafted, but that would have been what, 05?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in like 5th grade. So
I'm
not that young. What did you think? What do you think? I started the show when I was 11?
Yeah, pretty much. Anything pre-COVID is just old.
No, you're not wrong.
He had 39 goals and 63 assists for 102 points his rookie season.
Yeah, and you know what? Connor Bedard idolized. That was his favorite player growing up.
You know what's even more wild than that is he didn't win Rookie of the Year.
Was it Ovechkin?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
Like,
sense.
could you imagine your rookie year scoring 102 and not winning the Calder?
Yeah, that's what happens when you have multiple greats in one draft right there. I mean,
And then he
it's
just followed it up with the next season scoring 120 points.
no big deal.
Yeah, I'll just up it.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but the Blackhawks season opener is going to be in Pittsburgh against Sidney Crosby.
I did. And so that'll be cool, like the changing of the guard kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, out with the old, in with the young. I mean, Sidney Crosby, how old is he now?
He is 36. He's on his last, the very, very tail end of his career.
Well, and I mean, 36 is pretty old in sports years, but especially when you've played how many playoff games on top of that? I mean, it's the same thing with Patrick Kane. I mean, look at how many cup runs they went on. I mean, both the Penguins and the Blackhawks won 3 Stanley Cups with Kane and Crosby. So that is a lot of extra time you're playing. And, in all those other years that they made playoffs too, didn't necessarily win a cup, but that's still a lot of extra games. It's a lot of miles on a body.
Yeah, it's wild to think that, Crosby entered the league when Bedard was born and they're going to play each other.
Yeah. When Kane scored that Stanley Cup winning overtime goal in Philadelphia, Bedard was 5.
But yeah, it's fantastic to think about, the fact that we got this game-changing player, and now with the rest of the draft and your free agency, that you're just building around this guy to optimize around him. And looking at, I'm not going to go through the whole all 11 players drafted by the Blackhawks, because at the end, just guys, I don't know anything about them.
A lot of them are lottery tickets, but I do think the next 2 picks are pretty significant in terms of their upside, what position they play, and the attributes they bring.
It will, I mean, just looking at the draft picks, and you can clearly see that Kyle Davidson has a type.
Right, exactly. I mean,
being
exactly.
a good skater. And so it was guys with some, shorter, but I don't want to say stocky, but like well-built, shorter guys that are fast and can skate really well. And then the late picks were behemoths. So your second pick, which was 19th overall, which is wild that Kyle Davidson had identified this guy as the guy they wanted. And he was the guy that they were trying to trade up for. And they couldn't make the trade up, but he fell to them at 19, is Oliver Moore from Team USA under 18. 18 years old, 5'11", 195 pounds. He's projected to be a top 6 forward. He can also play power play and penalty kill at a high level. Multiple people say he's the best skater in the draft with elite edge work. Needs to work on his scoring a little bit, but he's likely going to be your number 2 center in the future. But he's going to go next year to the University of Minnesota.
Yeah, so I think Nazar plays in Michigan, right?
I think so.
So, I mean, we continue to have high investment in college hockey because some of our top prospects are playing college hockey. So we've watched Nazar this past year, and now we'll see a similar speed guy in Oliver Moore, because Nazar was drafted for his speed as well last year. So watching Oliver Moore is going to be very, very interesting to follow. And as we all know, the University of Minnesota, that's a huge hockey program.
absolutely.
Huge.
Did you see who he said his roommate's going to be there?
No, who?
Sam Rinzel, the Blackhawks draft pick from last year.
Oh, no, really? Huh.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're going to have Blackhawk teammates, future Blackhawk teammates, rooming together at University of Minnesota. So very excited to see his growth. He's got to work on his offensive skills, but I'm very excited about what he can do.
Yeah, me too. I think that was a key pick to get right. We knew it was going to be Connor Bedard, number 1 overall. We're like, okay, what's going to be the second first round pick? Are they going to trade up? Are they going to trade down? If they don't trade down or up, who are they going to pick? And I think that this was a very intriguing one. Obviously, these types of draft picks in the NHL, unless you're Connor Bedard or Adam Fantilli, one of those guys, you don't have the exposure to those guys like, let's say, you have in the NCAA football or basketball. I mean, clearly, people are well more versed with a lot of those types of guys because they're on the national stage. But you watch Oliver Moore, you watch some of the tape, you look at the attributes he has. Like you said, you could see that he has a type, does Kyle Davidson. And one thing to note here, it was extremely forward heavy in this draft by the Blackhawks. So it fits
that was
that
the
mold.
strength of the draft.
Right.
Last year they went defense heavy, and this year forward heavy because of just what was available in the draft, and that makes sense. Is this drafting in the NHL is kind of like drafting in baseball. You're drafting for years down the road, and it's not like the NBA or the NFL where these guys come in right away and play. You're drafting guys, and the guy you draft this year might lap the guy you draft last year at the same position because they're all young players that have to play juniors or college or minors and work
Yeah, it's
their
not
way
linear
up.
across the board.
Yeah, so you're looking for a type. You're looking for a traits that you like that you're trying to build, and you're essentially you're Kyle Davidson. Your type. You're looking for cheetahs and gazelles.
It's an interesting way to put it, but yeah. You want to know something that's, obviously you probably know this, but I just wanted to mention this, is if you go and you look at the draft pick recap on the Blackhawks website and you realize how many of these draft picks they acquired in trades. Like, if you look at their first, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, their first 5 picks, 3 of them weren't theirs.
Yeah.
You took Oliver Moore with the Brandon Hagel pick you got from the Lightning. You had in the second round, you traded one of them, but the ones you kept, you had that one from the Alex DeBrincat trade with the Senators and the one with the Patrick Kane trade with the New York Rangers.
Yep. And I'll get into this in a little bit, but it's not just this year. They have a bunch of picks. It's next year and the year after that. And the year after that. They're stacking these for years.
Yeah, they're loaded. They are absolutely loaded.
Their first pick that they made in the second round is one that I'm pretty excited about. This is a very high ceiling potential player, Adam Guyon. 19-year-old goalie, the very first goalie picked in the draft. And he is not a Corey Crawford type. Corey Crawford was an excellent goalie, but he was one of those, kind of formulaic goalies. When this, he does this, and he did it really well. Not a knock, but Guyon is one of these really athletic Martin Brodeur type goalies where he'll stand on his head and ninja kick a puck out of the air because he's so athletic and just can do all kinds of crazy things. And he played in the World Juniors this year, and he put a mediocre Slovakia team on his back and just carried them and got named best goalie in the tournament. This kid's got a lot of work to do, but he has all the talent in the world, and he's going to a powerhouse university, a University of Minnesota Duluth.
Yeah, I was excited that they drafted him. And, right now, our future at goalie is kind of up in the air. I mean, we're going to give a chance to Arturs Soderblom this year. I think he should be getting the most of the reps between the pipes, I think.
Yeah, I mean, would I say our cupboard is bare at goalie? No, but I'm not sold on anybody yet. And to be fair, when we won the 3 Stanley Cups, there were question marks for the first 2 at goalie. And
oh, sure. I mean, they kind of figured this out as things go.
Yeah,
it tends to happen.
Yeah, and so, but to add another name into the mix, you've got Drew Comesso and Soderblom, and so you've got some guys. Adding to that room is never a bad thing, and I don't know who will wind up being the goalie of the future. Maybe none of them. Who knows? But I like the ceiling that Guyon has.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, the couple of clips I saw of him, it gives you goosebumps. The next pick was number 44 overall, Roman Kantsarov, who plays in the Russian juniors. Played 2 years in the Russian juniors, really productive while he was there. Fantastic skater with a lot of speed and really good puck skills. The next pick is Martin Misiak, 18-year-old winger. Played on the Slovakia team with Adam Guyon. He's a really great skater. He's a bottom 6 type guy. And then number 67, they picked Nick Lardis from the OHL Hamilton team. And he's another great skater. He got traded to Hamilton where he really blossomed. Good goal scorer. And all of these guys are in the 5'9" to 5'11" type range. But after that, they got a guy that's 6'4", 6'2", 6'4", 6'6", 6'3". Those later round picks were all big dudes.
Yeah, I think that you're seeing kind of that pattern where you do need some size, right? So I think that was a good spot to draft those kind of guys.
With my favorite being Marcel.
Oh, I love that name.
He's 6'4", 242. He's a big boy.
That is a big boy.
I was making notes and I just wrote big.
Yeah.
Just big.
That's all you need.
They got another guy from Sweden who's 6'6", and he is a penalty killer, and he is a net front presence, like an immovable guy in front of the net. But I mean, honestly, they drafted a ton of forwards.
Only one defenseman. That was the final pick.
One defenseman, one goalie.
Yep.
9 forwards.
Well, like you said, that was the strength in this draft.
Yeah.
So they didn't really reach or try to play too creative. They were able to identify the forward talent that they wanted. You start out with some speed, then you go into some size later, and kind of went with that plan.
And, they had 11 picks in the 7 rounds this year. Next year, they're going to have 8 picks, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 2 thirds, a 5th, and a 6th. In 2025, they're going to have 9 picks, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, a third, 2 fourths, a sixth, and a seventh. And in 2026, they're going to have a first, 3 seconds, a third, 2 fourths, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh.
It's the opposite of Stan Bowman. We had so little picks during his reign.
Right. And the thing is like most of these guys aren't going to make it. But it gives you that depth because the more, especially in the NHL, is the more bites you have at the apple, the more that you, the more likely you are to get a guy that's going to come up and play for your team or be available, just that's in your farm system to play for Rockford or eventually come up to the big squad.
Exactly. You used the term I was going to use, chomps at the apple.
So it's, the more, the more guys you have, the more likely you are to get a guy that's going to come through. And the problem with the Blackhawks was twofold. You didn't have enough guys and you weren't developing them well. Now we've got, we're bringing in more guys and then now the key part is how are you going to develop them? And that's the next big component.
Yeah, I mean, remember, we've talked about it on this show before that, for the past decade or so, we were probably the worst team in hockey at developing talent.
Right.
We were absolutely bottom tier. Now is your chance to completely reinvent that with this new regime.
Yeah, the one thing you can commend Stan Bowman on was having an eye for foreign players that you could bring over. But drafting and developing, no bueno.
Brutal.
It was just years of going to Ice Hogs games and you're like, all right, this is the best player on the Ice Hogs. And then at some point just going, nope, they're not going to make it to the Blackhawks.
Right. And it's like you would hear about the hype about some of these guys, and then you just kind of watch them, whether it's in Rockford or it's, when they get, chomps at the apple at the, the NHL level, and you're just kind of like, really? Like, is this really part of the future? And then sometimes they go off to other organizations and they look good. So
right.
Clearly some systematic issues.
And, we are sort of seeing, hopefully the last remnants of that is we had a trade with Boston and Ian Mitchell was a restricted free agent. And rather than giving him a qualified offer, moved on.
Yep.
I forgot who else was who's the other player that they sent in that package. Another restricted free agent.
I'm blanking.
Alec
is it
Regula.
Yeah, Regula. Yeah, Alec Regula. Yeah.
And the two of them were restricted free agents. Blackhawks decided they weren't going to make qualifying offers and parted ways and brought over Taylor Hall, who's a very good player, and Nick Foligno, who had a nice year last year, but is older. And so you bring in these two veterans, and Taylor Hall is a very good player still. They just the Bruins needed some salary cap room and essentially gave them to the Blackhawks for nothing. And for the Blackhawks, it's helping them reach the salary floor.
Yeah, because they still had a ways to go to get to the salary floor. And, listen, getting a guy like Taylor Hall, a former first overall pick, he had 60 points 2 years ago. I mean, he still can be a solid, productive player. If you bring in Taylor Hall as a nice veteran presence to have on this team, around Connor Bedard, well, hey, guess what? If he puts up 40, 50, 60 points, I don't know if he'll put up 60 on this team, but if he puts up 45, 50, you have to take that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Here's the thing is for the Blackhawks, it's just nothing but wins. It helps you get to the salary cap floor, number one. Number two, he's a high pick that has had some success in this league. That's going to be a veteran presence for Connor Bedard, helping him navigate that because there's absolutely, it's cool to be number one overall, but that's a kind of a little bit of a burden and that, you have these high expectations that you worry about meeting. So you've got another number one overall pick. And he's still a good player you're going to most likely put on the line with Connor Bedard. And if he's successful, then you have the option of, you going to keep him or you can flip him at the trade deadline for probably a first plus.
Yeah, it's possible.
So it's a huge win. He's Nick Foligno. He was an unrestricted free agent, but the Blackhawks signed him to a way overpriced deal. He was a guy that was probably going to get under $1 million, and the Blackhawks gave him 1 year, $4 million contract. But he had a really good season last year, and he's a good veteran.
Yeah, he is.
The Islanders then traded Josh Bailey and a 2026 second rounder to the Blackhawks for future considerations. So the Blackhawks weaponizing their cap space. And I was a little bit excited because I was like, I think Josh Bailey would be a nice veteran to have on this team. And then 26 minutes later, they bought him out.
Yeah, that didn't last very long now, did it?
No, that was, the 26-minute career as a Blackhawk. You got to, play some, I will remember you. And do a little montage of just pictures of him for playing on other teams, remembering his Blackhawks career.
Former Blackhawk legend Bailey.
But the reports are that they talked to him and basically that was his wish, is to get bought out. So the Blackhawks essentially bought a second round pick. And then they traded a 7th round pick for unrestricted free agent and Blackhawk enemy Corey Perry.
Oh boy, this one was I was not expecting this one.
I was not expecting this. And then they signed him to another sweetheart deal. 1 year, $4 million contract extension, because he was an unrestricted free agent. So essentially they just got
they got his rights before free agency hit.
Yes, they got his rights so they could negotiate with him, and they brought him in. And God, is he aggravating? And maybe he's less aggravating when he's on your team, but when you're playing against him, he is aggravating.
Hey, and that's exactly what Kyle Davidson said in his press conference after that. He knows that everybody on the Blackhawks fan base hates him. We remember that 2015 playoff series.
Yeah, so they brought him over. I don't know what role he's going to play.
Agitator. He's not going to score 20 plus goals anymore. Those days are over.
Oh, those days are long gone. He still has a nice shot. So, but it's weird that you have this team full of, I'm going to say it again, is cheetahs and gazelles, and you bring over a plotting elephant to be on your team. You're not going to put him on the line with Bedard. Would he score some goals? Absolutely, because he's going to get set up and he still has a nice shot. But I don't, Like
If someone
maybe,
takes a run at Bedard, Corey Perry's just going to level them.
right, but don't you have other guys for that?
Yeah, but you got Corey Perry to do that now.
So I don't know where he plays. It'll be interesting.
I mean, you look at the right wingers you have right now on the team. Just looking at some of them, you got Joey Anderson, Mackenzie Entwistle, Corey Perry, Taylor Radish. So, he's gonna be a veteran on that team. He's not gonna be a first liner, obviously.
No,
Maybe
not
a
second
third liner. Probably
maybe,
third.
Probably third. Man, this roster's still bare bones covered.
Well, hey, we're about to land into free agency. So by the time people are probably listening to this podcast, free agency will have started. And we promise next week we'll recap some of the free agents we signed. But yeah, no, I mean, right now it's still bare bones because, I mean, I just listed your right wingers. At left wing, you got Nick Foligno, Taylor Hall, Boris Kachuk, Jujar Kara, Austin Wagner, Anders Bork. And then over at center, you got Bedard, you got Athanasiou, Colin Blackwell, Jason Dickinson, Reese Johnson, Tyler Johnson, Philip Kurashev. And, there you go. I mean, that's your depth chart right now. And, there's some figuring out to do. So
there, they imagine that they're probably going to sign a couple veterans that are overpriced, that are short-term, 1 year, 2 year contracts.
And who cares if you overpay for the next 2 years?
Absolutely. That's, it's your maintaining that cap flexibility for 3 years down the road.
Right. And this is where I come back to what I said earlier in the show. You have to remember that this team is still early in a rebuild. So if you're looking for impact Stanley Cup now winning moves, you're not going to get it.
The interesting thing is, all right, so the only Blackhawk to receive the qualifying offer of the restricted free agents was Philip Kurashev. So Anders Bjork, Austin Wagner, and Caleb Jones are going to actually hit free agency tomorrow.
I'm just reading off the current roster before free agency.
But Kurashev, it's interesting because he's a guy that theoretically could be here when we get on the other side of this rebuild.
Sure.
He's young enough and probably talented enough to be here. But it's going to be interesting because what kind of contract you give him, because it's a tough road. He's a guy that you don't want to overpay.
No. Because
he's going to be here and you're probably not going to flip him. You need that contract to be a reasonable contract. So his agent's going to probably come in and be like, you just gave Corey Perry $4 million a year and he stinks. And he's a turd. So what about $4 million for us? And you have to kind of be like, listen, we're playing this game. We signed him to a 1 year deal to get us to the minimum. We need you to be here long term. It's a tough conversation to have when the agent surely knows what they're doing, but they're both sides are going to play the other side of that. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Kurashev, because I think he's a player they like. He's played well, should be brought back.
I think that's the whole intention.
So it's just, what kind of contract are you going to give him? Because cash wise, you can front load or back load a contract. But as far as your salary cap goes in the NHL, it goes by average value. So you're just, boom, you can't finagle the salary cap like you do in the NFL.
Right, exactly. What's really funny about this current roster that I'm looking at right now on ESPN? Like I said, this is the roster before we hit free agency tomorrow. So the reason I bring up those names is because, they're going to make decisions on who they're going to bring back. So right now they are, tomorrow they will not be. But for right now on ESPN, Jonathan Toews is still on the roster. So
he's on
enjoy
the
it.
roster. He is on the roster for like 12 more hours.
If even, yes, pretty much. So I'm just saying, like, if you want to say that Toews is no longer a Blackhawk, by the time you're listening to this, he's probably not going to be. But as we're talking right now on Friday night, he still is. Technically.
Yeah, I mean it's true. So it's but thinking about free agency, I think we're going to get some surprise names.
I'm sure we will.
I think they will be active with guys that are willing to do a 1-year high dollar deal. I wouldn't be surprised if Max Domi returns.
I hope so. I just wonder though, did his value go up last year to a point where maybe they don't want to pay that? I mean, they can pay it if they want, but would it be reasonable for him to ask for a bit more than he's probably worth? I mean, he's gonna probably get overpaid no matter what, but to what extent do you do that? Personally, I'd love to have Max Domi back, but he had a really nice productive year last year with the Hawks and a little bit with the Dallas Stars. So, is his market value going to be higher than he's probably worth? Yeah, probably will be.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, like, he loved being here. He was really happy to be here. The fans love him. The coaching staff loved him. He was productive, and they overpaid to bring him here, but he outperformed that contract. So it's he's a guy that I think that you at least have to have a conversation about bringing back. And I'm sure he would entertain it. It's whether or not you can get the deal done. But I mean, that one seems like at least a no-brainer to at least, have that conversation and
Absolutely
try to work out the numbers. So it is going to be interesting to see how this shapes up.
It will. And I think that one thing as well going into this season is there's going to be moves made, and there already have been moves made that have significance to the infrastructure of the organization. And what I mean by that is they brought in Corey Perry because there was a link to Luke Richardson there. So I think that they're going to be making those types of moves within this, is that there's a relevant connection to this organization. Because listen, a lot of this organization's flipped. So they've got a lot of new guys coming from different places. And, you can identify players. Hey, this player played for Luke Richardson when he was a coach in Montreal, or, when this person was a coach here, they have strong links there. I think you could see more moves kind of like that happen.
Yeah, it's going to be ties to the coaching staff and fits around Bedard.
Exactly.
That's the moves you're making. Because that's right now you're not fielding a team. I mean, could you put together a team that makes the playoffs? Absolutely. Even accidentally, because you have a coaching staff that looks like from last year that they really got the most out of players, because that was a garbage roster last year. And there were times where you're like, man, this team is playing too well. And
oh yeah, we said it multiple times last year.
And you're going to add some guys that, like, you'd be adding. You're going to have a first line that's a legit first line.
Yeah, with Hall and Bedard, you gotta like that, right?
And I don't know who will be the other winger, but you have a legit line. And so you're like, okay, another year of these guys being in the system and adding talent, Will they make the playoffs? Probably not, but they're going to be, they're not going to be a bottom feeder.
Well, and here's another thing too, is when you look at the way this team is being built up, the way you said that, hey, could they technically build a playoff team if they wanted to? Yes. But the reason we're not doing that is because you would be investing in so much that would impact your future from building a legitimate cup contender. It's like fielding Ryan Pace Bears teams over and over and over again.
Right. So, but they're not, I think even with the path that they're taking, where they're getting to the cap floor with some veterans, and they've added some talent with Bedard and Taylor Hall. They're going to be significantly better this year just from that avenue.
It'll be worth watching alone for Connor Bedard being on the team. And I think I could say this with great confidence that you're going to have that building pretty full every night.
Oh, absolutely.
If they're playing competitive and Connor Bedard is lighting the world on fire, people will come out to watch it.
Right.
And I said multiple times last year too, how surprised I was how well they were able to fill up the United Center last year.
So
wasn't a sellout every time, but
no, but people came. I was expecting it to be, you should be able to walk up and get cheap tickets. And
hey, can I sit in the 200 level?
Let me sit on the bench for $50.
Oh, thank you. What a great deal.
But I think they're going to be a competent team. Not good, but they're going to be a team that you're not just going to roll into town and whoop their ass.
I see really scrappy.
Yeah. Scrappy with some talent, with a scrappy with a good first line.
Right. It's like, around Connor Bedard, you have guys like, Corey Perry and Nick Foligno and Andres Athanasiou. It's going to be a scrappy little team. They might annoy the hell out of you, you know?
Yeah. And then you start looking at their prospects, and Korchinski, Sam Renzel, Wyatt Kaiser, Isaac Phillips, Alex Vlasic. You're like, okay, that's some nice defensemen that you've got there. No wonder they were fine moving Ian Mitchell, who we thought was going to be the future guy. You look at the forwards: Bedard, Reichel, Nazar, Sovanov, Colton Dock, Cole Gutman, Ryan Green. Like, okay, they've got some guys that we're kind of excited about. And then, Combesso and Soderblom and Guyan at your goalie prospects. This cupboard's not bare. This, the prospect pool is pretty nice.
So
arguably top 3 in the NHL.
So yeah, I think that, they already rose their stock pretty significantly last year with what Kyle Davidson was able to acquire. A lot of those being the draft picks from his first draft last year. But now especially, there's a lot of value in this farm system. And that's really exciting. It's not just a top heavy, oh, hey, here's a bad team with one great player. This is a great player in an organization that now has a ton of upside talent.
Right. Absolutely. Now it's just getting that talent coached up and ready to play for the big team.
Yep. It's all about growing now. You're
Yep.
planting the seeds. You're going to water them. You're going to watch them grow.
Yep. And, once they get here, I like the coaching staff that they have in place.
Me too. Me
For
too. I
young-
feel
young
really
players.
good about Luke Richardson.
I think if you can get these guys to a point and pass them over, that Luke Richardson is going to have them playing high level hockey.
Yep.
So I'm excited about the Blackhawks. I haven't ordered my Connor Bedard jersey yet, but that's coming soon.
I'm scared. I'm scared that if I buy his jersey, he's going to tear his ACL or something.
Did you see somebody ordered a Bedard jersey and it came with the placard Bedrad?
Oh, that's funny. You got to keep that now just for shits and giggles.
Bedrad.
Connor Bedrad.
Connor Bedrad.
Conrad Bedrad.
Where should we go from here? Should we talk Bulls? We haven't talked Bulls in a bit.
Yeah, I was just going to bring this up. And I mean, they're kind of relevant in the news right now. And eventually we had to talk Bulls, right?
So this team was assembled by AKA and Mark Eversley as a unit, not a collection of superstars, but a unit that worked together. And the glue to make it all work was Lonzo Ball. And it's looking like more and more like Lonzo Ball is never going to play again.
Yeah, I mean, you can put it pretty much at 0, right? I mean,
they've already said that he's not playing next year.
and they went out and got Javon Carter, the former Brooklyn / Milwaukee guard. I mean, who's probably going to be your discount Lonzo Ball going forward.
Yeah, and is he going to replace Lonzo? Absolutely not. But he's going to be better than Pat Beverly.
Right. I mean, I think that right now you have to look at that move as, hey, someone's got to fill a type of role, and you're not going to just find another Lonzo Ball out there. You don't have somebody on the market that's like that, or you're not willing to pay somebody that's like that, or, at the price that they want, I should say. There's not somebody out there at as reasonable of a price because, everyone's getting overpaid in free agency and you don't have assets to trade for anybody. So you did what you could by bringing in Javon Carter. And frankly, I really didn't know who he was. And then, people told me, did some research. I'm like, okay, I can see why this would be a move to make. And, but again,
he was a bull killer.
Yeah,
that way. He was a bull killer.
Yeah, and then I started to remember who he was.
Yeah, he's a good perimeter defender. He's a 3-point shooter. He's a 3-and-D guy, and they needed the 3-and-D guy. And they re-signed Kobe White to a 3-year, $33 million deal, which I think was good.
I'm fine with bringing Kobe White back. I mean, he played well down the stretch last year. And, obviously he's going to have to keep that going and find consistency, because if there's one thing that's really hurt him, it's been consistency, because he's had stretches where he's looked good. Because if he can kind of build off that positive momentum he had last year, and you could rely on him actually being able to shoot the 3 ball and score a little bit, then that's a good get. But he's got to be consistent, because we've seen stretches of Kobe White where you're like, this guy should be in the G League right now.
Yeah, but they've given up on so many guys that you're like, we can't give up on this guy. I think we have to see him out. So I'm good with the contract. The one that does make me nervous is they bid against themselves to bring back Vooch on a 3-year, $60 million contract.
Here's my thing. And I'm going to kind of parrot what they said on the radio today. I was listening during work, and I think they said it well. In a vacuum, it's a fine move because Vucevic is a good scorer. He's a big guy. So, yeah, there's value there. But you just, with the dynamic of this team, you mix that with, and it's just, when they re-signed him, all I could kind of go was, nah. You didn't lose him for nothing, but you're going to keep him around for 3 more years. We see his strengths, we see his weaknesses, and he's no spring chicken. He's what, 33 now?
Yeah.
And it's what, how much guaranteed?
I think it's 3 years, 60 million, all guaranteed.
So, I mean, it's just meh. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I think I've just kind of resigned that this is where we are. I mean, you're running this back. Essentially, you're running, unless you go out and trade DeMar DeRozan, you're running this back. And we can spend hours talking why running this back isn't good enough. But that's the reality of this. And, you know, while other teams in the city of ours would make me more upset, I feel like I'm so numb with the way the Bulls have been for so many years. It's just kind of like, it is what it is.
And here's the thing. This is the devil's advocate, what they're going to say. Well, look, when we brought Patrick Beverley in, who was the 4-man stopgap at point guard, is we beat a lot of the top teams. We made it to the playoffs, and the team that we lost to ended up going to the NBA Finals. That's what they're going to say. So they're like, if we bring this squad back, but bring in a real, bring in a point guard and, you know, better shooting from perimeter, then, you know, we've got a shot to make noise.
But here's the thing that we all understand. One of many things, but I think this is one of the defining differences. Look at Miami, look at the run they went on. What 2 things do they have? They have a guy in Jimmy Butler who up until the finals shined brightest when the moment was big. We don't get that from a lot of these players. We've seen it from DeMar DeRozan, but Jimmy Butler is a pretty different level in the playoffs that we've seen. Number 2, and I think this is really important, the Heat have superior coaching.
Absolutely.
They just do. Billy Donovan, to me, is a replacement level coach. He's not bad. He's not great. If you're going to tell me you would choose Billy Donovan over Eric Spoelstra, you're nuts. But if you're going to tell me that Billy Donovan is Jim Boylan, Fred Hoiberg level, it's also nuts. He's a replacement level / maybe slightly above replacement level coach in my eyes.
Billy Donovan is an above average coach. He's not an elite head coach.
He's like a coach that's obviously, I'm not saying like this is results here, but if you had to make like an analogy, he's the coach of a team that's like a 6 seed every year.
Right.
It's like, okay, you're a good enough coach to carry your team to the playoffs. You're better than a number of coaches, but you sure as hell ain't one of the top. And you're not going to make it all the way to the end. Now, you know, obviously roster construction is a factor, but better coaches get more out of certain players. And I don't think that Billy Donovan is bad at his team, you know, putting together effort. But there are times when they just do things, or when Billy Donovan makes in-game choices towards the end that just make you scratch your head.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think he was one of the problems with this team. Can you do worse? Yes, but you can do a whole lot better too. But that's their guy, and they're going to stick with him.
Exactly. And I think that what's a shame is that the Bulls, once again, they back themselves into this corner where they're stuck watching other teams being able to do more. You're sitting back and watching other teams making big coaching hires around you. I mean, you pretty much locked yourself in with Billy Donovan.
Yep.
And it just, with Billy Donovan, it's like I said, it's not like he's a bad coach, but there's only so high you can go with that level of coach. It's like everything with this Bulls team has a ceiling, and that ceiling is not a high seed championship contender. It's just below that.
No, this is a team that if everything goes right and you see guys play their best and stay healthy, that maybe a 5th seed?
Maybe. I mean, here's the thing. Cleveland is getting better. And the New York Knicks are no slouch either. So, you're not better than Milwaukee. You're not better than Boston. You're not better than Philadelphia. Like, those are absolute, right? Like, we can put that, even though you played them in the play-in tournament, you're not better than Miami. Agreed?
Yeah.
Right now, I don't think you're better than Cleveland. Close, maybe, but I don't think you're as good or better. And I think you could kind of say the same thing. Maybe you're on the level of the Knicks. I mean, the Knicks had a pretty nice season last year.
Yeah, I mean, every team that's going to have or every year you're going to have a team that sort of falls because of injuries.
There's a little fluctuation.
Or going backwards. But I'm saying is best case scenario, this is a 5th seed team.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely.
That's their ceiling,
because,
I think.
Right. I agree. I mean, right now, you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference and you kind of look where the Bulls are. And I think that's a very reasonable ceiling because, you look at last year, you went 40-42. I mean, you were the definition of mediocre 500 team last year. You were 488, 2 games below. When you have 40 wins, you're just basically a 500 team because you're one away from literally being one. So 500 type team. So last year's 5th seed was the Knicks. That's 47 wins. I think the ceiling with this Bulls team, you include the addition of Javon Carter and you say, okay, look, you brought Kobe White back. You brought Vooch back. Vooch is another year older. And then for the time being, assume you're going to have DeMar and Zach LaVine, unless DeMar gets moved. But for right now, if you assume he's going to be on the team, he's going to be another year older. And, let's say best case scenario next year, you have a healthy Zach LaVine. He's a bit more consistent. Maybe have a bit more of a healthy Alex Caruso as well. So you put that all together and you say, okay, last year's 5th seed was the Knicks. They had 47 wins. And you look at the potential ceiling of this Bulls team, I think mid 40s, maybe 46, 47 is reasonable. I don't think it's much higher than that, to your point.
And honestly, is you look at that Denver team and you have no chance of beating them.
Hey, they beat the crap out of them in that one game somehow, but that's regular season.
Yeah, it's funny now that the world gets a view of Nikola Jokic, and he is hilarious without knowing he's funny.
Oh, I love him.
Like he's a guy that doesn't love basketball. He's just really good at it. It's a job though. Like that guy. Oh, hey, You excited about the parade? No, but I gotta go.
That
You
would
excited
totally
about
be
playing?
me.
Are you excited about playing in the finals? I'd rather be home with my family.
I love it. I love it so
It's
much.
amazing. I can't watch enough of clips of him.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Like, oh, hey, you posted like one of the best games series ever in the finals. Really? I don't know. Not that impressed. Like, just just a humble, funny guy that doesn't love basketball is literally a job. Like, it's funny. There's people that are just absolutely passionate about basketball, love the game. And this is a guy who is probably the best player in the world. And it's just a job that he does to make the ends meet and, give his family a better life. It's so funny.
It is. That's the kind of personality you love seeing, like a superstar be at in any sport.
Uh, I've got the hiccups. Um. All right. Oh man, Susie Colbert laid off.
ESPN just did a massive purge of
Yeah.
layoffs today. Van Gundy was laid off. Max Kellerman was laid off.
Oh, Max Kellerman was laid off too.
Yeah, I mean
Oof.
here's the thing. That industry is relentless. It's brutal. You saw what happened with the Athletic, right?
I I heard some rumblings, but I didn't follow it up. They gutted a bunch of their uh writers.
Yeah, including James Fegan, who covered the White Sox, just completely left away. Really sad. I mean, he did good work over there, and a lot of good people, hardworking people lost their jobs. The industry, the sports media industry is just it's a really, really tough one.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing: is they grew so fast. I mean, the Athletic, the prime example, they just grew so fast, and you're like, how are they making this profitable? And I'm not going to argue that the Athletic didn't put out quality work. I subscribe to the Athletic, but you're like, how are they financially going to make this work? And ESPN just kept growing and giving these people stupid salaries, and then it just kind of came to a head where they're like, okay, hey, we've got to back off here, and they don't learn from it. They're just like, oh, we're going to get as big as possible, and then we'll just lay off. And
Yep.
it's part of it is just like, hey, you can't overpay people. Like, why is Stephen A. Smith make that much money? Nobody likes Stephen A. Smith. Sure, he's your biggest personality, but nobody likes him. Why is he your biggest personality? Develop
Because he
better
creates
personality.
controversy.
Yeah, develop better personalities, and then uh, and stay reasonable.
Well,
Keyshawn Johnson gone. They canceled the morning show with Keyshawn and Jay Williams.
they did, yep.
Max Kellerman gone. Susie Colbert gone. Todd McShay is gone. Steve Young is gone. Matt Hasselbeck gone. Jason Fitz gone. Man, they just woof.
It was a huge purge. Huge. It's like you can't even keep track of who's even left anymore.
Yeah. Jalen Rose gone. Van Gundy gone. LaFonso Ellis gone. Yeah. And the crazy part is the operating budget grew 56% last year.
Wow. Over half. That's crazy.
ESPN or Disney, which owns ESPN, is laying off 7,000 people.
Sheesh.
Wild, wild, wild.
Yep.
But Stephen A. Smith is still there.
He's invincible. He's not going anywhere.
Right? Crazy. I don't even know who still works there.
Beats me.
Um,
I really haven't watched much ESPN in recent years, to be honest.
Kendrick Perkins, JJ Redick, and Shannon Sharp are still there.
Well, isn't Shannon Sharp leaving? Didn't he just? He's leaving. With Skip, right? That the show was Skip. He just left that.
He left that. Wasn't that on Fox though?
Yeah, it was. It was FS1.
Yeah, and then he came over. Yeah, full list of ESPN layoffs so far. Van Gundy, Jalen Rose, Max Kellerman, Keyshawn Johnson, Todd McShay, Hasselbeck, Ashley Brewer, Susie Colbert, Steve Young, LaFonso Ellis, Jason Fitz, June Lee, Jordan Cornette, David Pollock, Nick Friedel.
Just amazing how much is gone now.
Yep.
Really hasn't been good since Stuart Scott died. He was one of the very best.
Stuart Scott was great. I loved Stuart Scott.
I don't think there was a person I knew who followed sports who didn't like Stuart Scott. Like, people have their preferences, but like Stuart Scott was universally loved.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Stuart Scott was great. Trying to even think of anybody that even came close.
I mean, he kind of stands out as the GOAT for me.
I mean, I was never a big fan of Van Pelt or Dan Patrick or Olbermann or Kenny Mayne.
Ugh, Olbermann.
Ryan Kenny.
Ugh.
You know, it was Stuart Scott was the GOAT.
He really was. It was really sad when he died.
Oh,
cancer
absolutely.
is such a bitch.
Yep. Absolutely. Didn't even make it to age 50.
Such a shame.
Yep.
But he'll be remembered for a very long time. For good reason.
And he's a Chicagoan.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. A Chicago legend.
All right. Should we go to baseball a little bit?
Sure.
You know, we didn't do a show last week, and that show would have been a lot different than this show than was the week before talking about Cubs baseball.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. After that first London game when we demolished the Cardinals 9-1, we were probably riding as high as we were about this team in a few years. They were a game under 500, and they entered in the second London game only needing to beat like their spot starter. It was like we were going into that game
with
like facing
Stroman on the mound.
With Stroman on the mound, right? It's like we were going to that game facing the backup quarterback. And then here you are, first inning, you snap of a finger, you score 4 runs, you're up 4-0. Like everything is looking Millhouse. And then boom. One of the worst misplays you'll see at first base ever. And it all just unraveled. The next thing we know, we're getting swept terribly by the Phillies.
Yeah. And then it just from there, like, they were already giving the excuses. Well, we came to London and we're going to lose our off days because of this, and we're going to have jet lag, and you just knew that they weren't going to be winning games.
And here's the thing, momentum or not, you did run into a bit of a buzzsaw because the Phillies are red hot right now. That offense is potent and it's clicking. And you had 2 of your 3 toughest matchup pitchers. Jameson Taillon just has flat not been good this year.
No, he is not.
And it doesn't look like he trusts this stuff. And it's been a real struggle, a real struggle. And, Drew Smyly, the numbers have looked good this year. And there have been a number of starts where Smyly has legit looked good. But if you watched his last few, you kind of saw him smoke and mirroring his way out of some not as good command and hard contact. Like if you watch the start before against Pittsburgh, he got a lot of line drive outs and some lucky swings at pitches that just weren't very good. I don't think Smyly is going to be like awful the rest of the year. All I'm saying is the way he was trending the past few games, it looked like a clunker was inevitable. And sure enough, against the Phillies, it was. You felt like there was going to be a regression game and you got it.
Yeah. I mean, when we re-signed him, like, you were like, you hope for the best with him, but you know what kind of pitcher he is, and you put a good defense behind him, and it's for the most part turned out pretty well.
Yes.
But if you're in a must-win game, you don't feel good about him being in there.
No, I mean, he's really meant to be a 4 or 5 starter.
Yes. And I mean, if you're in a must-win game, if it's not Stroman or Steele, you don't feel good. Hendricks has pitched pretty well.
I will say Kyle Hendricks has looked pretty good.
But do you feel good if he has to pitch in a must-win game in 2023?
Better than Smyly or Taillon? Absolutely. But to the level of Justin Steele or Stroman?
I mean, I feel better about Wisniewski coming in and getting the start over Taillon.
Yes.
At this point. But I mean, Justin Steele is...
He's awesome.
Just awesome.
He's awesome. Like today, he goes out there, first 2 batters, hits a guy, and then an error. And then he comes right back and just gets out of it. And then even remember the London game too, he ran into trouble at the end of his start. He had like 2 guys in scoring position, nobody out to run in, and then he just strikes out the next 3 guys.
Yep.
Like that is a bulldog out there.
Dog.
Dog.
And I'm going to say this is I think you have to re-sign Stroman.
You can't go more than 3 years, though. I am going to say that.
No, I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm fine overpaying him for 3 years.
And if you're going to keep him around, which I'm totally for, you can't have him as your number 1 the next few years.
No, Justin Steele is your number 1.
Just here's like, look at Sunday's game against the Cardinals. Okay, so he had a blister was bothering him. That's going to make an impact. But here's the thing too. When he's good, he's good. And he does rely on contact. But when you rely on contact, there's going to be games where things just don't go right. I mean, the whole thing I'm trying to say here is the Cubs are going to need a number 1 that's going to miss bats. And as effective as a number of these pitchers have been, you don't have a lot of that. Like, you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, just the market in the off season is not good. And you're a team that is now entering their, hey, you better win period. You better start winning. And if you trade him off, I don't think you're going to get the value that you want in a trade. And if you don't re-sign him, he walks away for nothing. And are the Cubs in striking distance of first place? No, but they're not out of it by any stretch.
It's just so annoying. The Reds and the Brewers will just not stop winning.
So it's one of those things. It's like we're on the precipice of making that decision. Like, all right, do we trade him off? Do we re-sign him? Those are the only two options. You cannot just let him hit free agency. Period. Like, they can't. That's just a terrible move. Can we agree with that?
Yes. And like, here's the thing. You can look at it this way. Think about the future going forward. Don't think about it as just this year in a vacuum. So deciding on Stroman, either getting him for something or extending him, that's optimizing for now and tomorrow. You're not thinking of this year as a vacuum necessarily, because here's the reality. Even if you're in this race, this team is in no way good enough to win a World Series. So,
absolutely.
Here, the way I see it is, make the moves necessary that are going to benefit you beyond now. So if that means extending Stroman, extend Stroman. If that means making another extension with somebody else, do it. But you're not going to put your chips on the table for this year. I mean, really, I see the trade deadline as, for the most part, you kind of stand pat. I mean, I know Tom Ricketts said, we're going to be buyers, which I like the attitude, but really, what are you going to buy that's going to make you a legitimate contender this year? It's...
I don't want them to be buyers. Unless they just go on a hot streak, and even then, I want it to be minimal buyers. Like,
they can
we'll
add
add
things
a bullpen.
for cheap.
Yeah,
yes.
Add a bullpen arm or something. But no,
you're not going to trade for a number one starting pitcher. You're not going to trade for a superstar all-star bat. You're going to make little moves, little ads. Perfectly fine with that, even if you're not in first place. But and the other thing too is, I mean, you're not really going to sell much if you were. Maybe you sell a few bullpen arms, but unless you sign Stroman, you don't extend him, and then maybe Cody Bellinger, but most of your guys are kind of locked down, right? So
yeah, I just, here's the thing is, you need, regardless of what happens this year, if you feel that you're too far away to go for it at the trade deadline, cool. But next year, you should be good enough to win your division, or at least compete for the division. But part of that is you need a rock solid starting rotation. And if you let Stroman go, which, okay, it is not per se about Stroman, you have to have somebody equally as good replace him. And you don't.
Unless you're as confident in the farm system.
But okay, so who's under contract for next year? Steele?
Yep.
It's
a 2-year deal for Smiley, technically.
Is it okay, so you have Smiley next year. Let's call him your 4 or 5. Okay, so you've got Steele as is going to be your number 1. And you'll call Smiley your 5. Who's 2, 3, and 4?
I think the hope is for Ben Brown and Jordan Wicks to be part of the equation.
Okay,
but
then
we don't know who they're going to be, though. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big ask to have, basically 3 young players be the anchor of your rotation.
I also do think, and I don't know if it's going to be true or not, but I'm just thinking in terms of the Cubs. I think that they're going to do their darndest to make Hayden Wisniewski a thing, and I still think he can be.
I still think he can be too, because he's got nasty stuff.
Yeah, it's not being executed properly, and they need to find out how to optimize that.
And that's an off-season thing, I think.
Right. And I mean, Sean, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I'm just trying to think of the way they're thinking.
Right. I'm just saying is that's a lot of a big ask to rely on. So, I mean, let's say in a dream scenario for them, it's your rotation is Steele, Wisniewski, Brown, Wicks, Smiley. And all those guys just make it. That's their dream scenario. What are the odds, though, of that happening? It's a big ask. I think, I mean, honestly, I think more likely is they trade Stroman and try to bring back Kyle Hendricks for a 2-year deal or a 1 with an option.
Maybe.
I just feel that having Stroman, even if he regresses, having a veteran there makes the pressure on the young pitchers less. Because
Agreed.
then I mean, let's just say that your best case scenario comes to fruition and Wisniewski figures it out and gets to the starting rotation and has command of that nasty stuff, and Brown and Wicks come up, and then Smiley's competing with Stroman for a spot. That's a no-brainer. So even if he regresses, you're like, oh, okay, there we go. But if Wisniewski doesn't find the command, or they feel like he's going to be a bullpen arm, and Wicks needs another year, and or they Brown and Wicks come up and they have their ups and downs or get injured, where's that other starter? It makes me nervous. It's money. This team has the money. They're a big market team.
Mm-hmm.
Pay the money. You know what the Dodgers would do? Pay the money. You know what the Yankees would do? Pay the money. You know what the Red Sox would do?
Pay the money. Mm-hmm.
And the Cubs just pay the money. And, who cares if it's the value or if you're in the luxury tax? Just pay the money. You're going to have Jason Hayward's contract finally off the books.
Tom Ricketts flashes the pumpkins at Gallagher Way chart every time they try to make a decision.
If we pay Stroman this amount of money, we have to sell this many tchotchkes.
The chart has Stroman value with his face next to it, and he's putting the value chart in pumpkins.
I worry about an extension because we'll have to give him an extension before we have the pumpkin sale. We're already spending pumpkin money that we haven't made.
Last time, a third of them were rotten by the time they got here.
That's my favorite term now for how much the Cubs have to spend. They got the pumpkin money.
Pumpkin money.
Every time Jed's like, I'd like to bring this guy in, and and Tom's like, you got that pumpkin money?
Everyone in the Cubs organization has a special calculator tab where it's like you equate the number in pumpkins and you see what you can afford.
It's there's no numbers. There's just pictures of different kinds of pumpkins.
It's not even digital. It's literally just like a slide chart.
It's an abacus, except instead of the beads, it's pumpkins.
Every member of the front office has their own.
Sliding over pumpkins. All right, we made 9 pumpkins. Slide them over, moving a 10 pumpkin spot.
Here's 5 pumpkins today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
But this team, they ran into a buzzsaw in the Phillies, and I'm not gonna argue. Coming back from London, you expected some regression, and it just sucked. Came at a time when they had so much momentum, and we were totally expecting that series to be a 500 team playing against the Phillies, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah. And honestly, it's what really sucked about the Phillies series was you have a finale that was very winnable. Kyle Hendricks pitched really good again, and you wasted a million chances, and you forgot how many outs you are, and you tried to bunt.
The bunts.
But Nick Madrigal redeemed himself, as did the Cubs on Friday, with a 10-1 win over the Guardians, and Nick Madrigal homered.
Yeah, Nick Madrigal, the power monster, hit a home run. I believe that was his first of the season.
First in like 2 years. Maybe 3 years. I think the last time he hit when he was a rookie on the White Sox.
And you bring Young in to play first base, and he's hitting the baseball well.
Young looks great so far. That swing is
I'm
nice.
just nervous. I'm getting Frank Schwindel vibes, though.
Well, here's the thing. Enjoy him while it lasts, if that's the case. I do think, though, he's got a bit of a higher ceiling than Frank Schwindel, but
because
trust me, I hear you.
Yeah. I just feel that every time we get some productivity at first base, that the venomous snake comes and bites it, and it's like a snake bit position.
Well, the snake has Anthony Rizzo's head on it.
It's possible. But
it just crawls out from under first base and bites him. It's blue with Anthony Rizzo's face on it.
It does suck, though, that we get this offensive outpour when we don't need it. And those games where you're like, oh my God, we pitched well enough to win, and we couldn't get run support. Then those are the games when you just need to get that run support. Like yesterday, 3-1 loss to the Phillies. It's Hendricks. Like, did he pitch great? No, but he pitched well enough to win the game, and the bats were just ice cold.
I mean, it was 7 innings, 3 runs is pretty darn good. He just had the one bad inning.
It was the one bad inning, and you were playing against Taijuan Walker, who is I believe before going into that game, I believe he was an over 4 ERA guy.
Yeah, but it always seems like we have trouble beating him for some reason.
Yeah, and then Kimbrel comes in and gets the save.
It's just frustrating because that last game, you had multiple innings where you had multiple guys on. You could have easily won that one. If you would have at least salvaged that game, I think we would have felt even better today after the 10-1 win over the Guardians. I think we would be more than okay if we would have swept the Cardinals in London, salvaged the finale against the Phillies, and then won today. So it's like, okay, you lost 2 really bad games in between that. It happens, whatever. The Phillies are good. we'd be feeling pretty different, right?
Absolutely. You don't, but you get swept after losing a game to the Cardinals. It just, it's a bad look. And you've got to go on another run. You just sort of have to keep pace with the front runners in this division. Because like you said, is the Brewers are keeping pace and the Reds are playing red hot.
Right.
And
Yeah,
eventually
they're not slowing down.
Eventually the Reds are going to come back to earth.
They can't give up 5 to 10 runs a game and keep winning. They just can't.
Yeah, they have no pitching. They eventually will come back to earth. I don't think the Brewers are as good as they have been playing. That's the good news.
They just keep finding annoying ways to win.
The problem is that this division is nobody wants to die. The Cardinals are the team that's closest to dying, but even them, they've gone on a couple of runs in the season. And
though you see those last 2 games against the Astros,
no,
they got creamed.
But I mean, they're always gonna be there until they're not there. But the Pirates are sticking around.
And they were reeling for a bit, and then they started to win some games again.
And the Reds are playing well, and the Brewers are playing well. So but I don't think any of them are juggernauts. So if you're the Cubs, you've got to play more consistently. You can't go on 4+ game losing streaks. You've got to start. You can't get swept in series. And you've got to start pulling some of these wins out to keep pace and eventually start, nipping at the lead.
Right.
And the other side of town, I mean, you've got the run support. But why is Tim Anderson still being batted so high in the order?
Wasn't it Ozzie Guillen that said that if they had any guts, they'd move him down in the order? Like, he literally used those words. And we know Ozzie Guillen obviously does not hold back.
Yeah, and he's right. And a lot of times Ozzie's just being Ozzie. He's dead right, though. Tim Anderson has something mental and physical going on. It is a combination. He is just not right. And to the point where that, a few weeks ago, you had rumblings of people going, yeah, I don't think the White Sox should pick up his option. And most folks kind of went, man, you got to pick up the option and mind your business. But now you're getting to the point where you're like, do we have to pick up that option?
I still think you do. If you're not going to trade him.
I don't, but he doesn't have any trade value.
Right, but if he goes, then who are you replacing him with?
That's the thing. But he has been just dreadful.
It's been bad. It's been bad. I mean, I just think he has to get right again, whether physically, mentally. Maybe he just needs to go on a hot streak at the plate. I don't know, but he's got to get right again. I mean, that's for sure, because he's kind of essential.
Here's the thing. Sebi Zavala has a higher OPS than Tim Anderson.
Isn't Sebi Zavala batting like 170?
165.
Wow.
And he has a higher OPS than Tim Anderson.
Wow.
And you might go, oh, maybe Sebi Zavala is crushing the ball when he hits it. No, his slugging is 330. And his OPS is 540. His OPS is 540, and it's higher than Tim Anderson's.
Yeah, that's wow.
Tim Anderson is never going to be a walk guy, and he's never going to be a power guy. He's got some deceptive power. Like, he can hit a home run.
Sure.
But it's not his thing.
He's not going up there to look to hit 20 plus.
Right. He's got sneaky power. He's not Nicky Two Strikes where, if he gets a home run, it's a newsworthy thing. But but Tim Anderson's not a walk guy either. He's a base hit guy. And he's batting .231. His on-base percentage is .270. Not good enough.
And we know how good he is. We know he's so much better than this. And there's clearly just it's got to be that combination of physical and mental, because when there's things like that going on, it makes it tougher to play, and how much better he is than this.
Yeah. And I mean, this year, 0 home runs, 11 RBIs, .230 batting average. Just not good.
And you're going to need it because, I mean, there are 11 games right now, as of right now, when we're recording Friday night, going to their series against the A's. They're 11 games under 500? They're only 4.5 back.
Yeah, they are 11 games under 500, but they've got a series against Oakland, who's not good. Like, you have to sweep Oakland.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
You have to sweep them. And, in the last 10, the Twins are 4-6, the Guardians are 6-4, the Tigers are 5-5, you're 5-5, and the Royals are 4-6. You're 4.5 games out of first. Nobody in your division is at 500.
That division is an embarrassment. It truly is. But you know what? If you have a chance to win it, I mean, they're going to go out and try to win it. That's the way I see it. I know we can talk about how good are they really, what are their chances, but I don't see them throwing in the towel if they're right there.
The problem is we keep talking. They're only 4 games out. They're only 5 games out.
It's a broken record.
It's a broken record. And at some point, 4.5, 4 or 5 games might as well be a million games out of first, because you won't be able to make up the ground.
Well, yeah.
Every week that goes past, the 4, 5, 4.5, whatever games that you're behind, it just becomes a little bit harder to reach. If you fall behind 4 games in April, you're like, oh, you know what? Nobody could hit. We had injury things. Okay. You're like, we have the rest of the season. We have 130 something games to come back. No problems. But every week that you get closer and closer to the middle of the season and towards the end of the season, it gets harder and harder to overcome those games. And can they do it? Absolutely. This is a bad division. But until you do it, it's all conjecture. It's all,
Well, what I think is giving people some different thoughts now is your schedule's easing up. I mean, you had a pretty tough schedule, but I mean, you're going to have plenty of games going forward against Oakland and Kansas City and Detroit, and I think they're probably playing Colorado. I mean, it's much more winnable games. So I think that's where you could say, hey, this really is their chance to take over, because I don't see anyone else in that division taking over right now. It is absolutely putrid. But I mean, to your point, we've been saying the same thing week and week and week. And the thing is that every week we say it, more time runs out. And eventually they're going to have to make a decision when it comes to the trade deadline. I don't see the White Sox falling far out enough for them to be sure sellers right now. The division is that bad. Their schedule gets a little easier in some series. And I do think you are seeing some positive things. You're seeing Luis Robert crush the ball. But you're seeing Andrew Vaughn hit too.
You have, and there are some easier series. Like, you got a 3-gamer against Oakland. You got to win. But here's your remaining schedule before the trade deadline. 3 against Oakland, 3 against Toronto, who's not
That's
a
tough.
slouch. And you got 3 against St. Louis in Chicago.
Yeah, St. Louis is reeling, but you can't
They're
still count
reeling.
them out.
You get the All-Star break. Then you go to Atlanta for 3.
That's gonna be
Atlanta
tough.
is gonna beat the brakes off you. They're like a juggernaut. Then you get 3 in New York against the Mets, who they're
They
struggling.
suck. They
but-
suck.
But on paper, that should be a really good team. This is the one where you're like, man, we got to win this. You go to Minnesota for 3. Then you play 2 against the Cubs. And then you end the month and the trade deadline with 4 at home against Cleveland. Like this is a schedule where
It's up and down.
yeah, it's up and down, but you've got 7 games against teams in front of you. You've got to pay, like,
And in my opinion, those are winnable for them. The division sucks. I don't know if they're going to do it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, the crappy thing though is, it's almost like the head-to-head games favor the team that's in front, just because the more likely outcome is you're going to split.
Right.
So, go 2-2 against Cleveland, then Cleveland just holds their lead. Even if you win the series against Minnesota and win 2 of 3, you gain 1 game on them. That's just the more likely scenario, is that you win 2 of 3 and you gain 1 game. You got to do a little better. I don't think the White Sox are going to be buyers.
I don't know what's going to happen here.
Because I don't even know what they would give up. Like their cupboard's bare.
I mean, you would probably have to trade some of your young pitching prospects who have some promise. They're a ways away, but you might have to sell some of those. I mean, do you bring up Oscar? I think you bring up Oscar Colas soon again. He's been absolutely tearing the cover off the ball in AAA. That might be a boost for you. I'm not saying they're going to be a big buyer. I just don't know if they're going to sell or not. If you're in it,
I don't think they're going to sell. I don't think they're going to buy either. And I think that might be the right move.
right.
But you've got Berger, who has been arguably your best hitter. He's coming back down to earth.
I'd go to Luis Robert with that. He's been, I'd say
Okay.
Luis Robert.
But Berger is then your second best hitter then. For the
Yeah, I mean,
season.
second most productive. Let's say that. I will give this to Andrew Benintendi's been swinging pretty good too. He doesn't hit for power, but he's a good slappy hitter.
No, and so apparently came to light that he's still recovering from an injury.
Yeah.
And that's been the power issue. But yeah, Benintendi has been fine. Nobody's complaining about the contract that they signed with him. But he just no power.
But hey, if he can do what he does well, then you'll take it.
Oh, absolutely. But you need to get more production out of second base. And Grandal hasn't been a bad hitter this year.
No, you just don't want him catching.
No, he's just a terrible catcher.
I think Vaughn's got a pretty solid stroke lately. He's been pretty productive at driving and runs. So
yeah, I mean, he's got good pop in his bat. Eloy hasn't been bad this year.
no, when he's healthy, he's actually been hitting pretty well.
You've got several guys that are hitting the ball. like
They're hitting for more
honestly,
power as a whole outside of Benintendi.
but you look and you're like, why is a guy that's hitting so well not scoring runs or driving in runs? And it points to like do a better batting order construction. Tim Anderson should be moved down the lineup. I mean, you can't take him out of the lineup because you don't have anybody to replace him. But bat him at the bottom of the order. Big, he's a big boy. Make him earn moving back up to second. You can't have somebody batting that poorly. Batting so high in your order.
Yeah,
And what's even worse is we talked about what a bad batting average he has. Do you want to know what his batting average is over his last 15 games?
I don't know. Do I?
111 with a 155 on base and a 130 slugging.
Yeesh.
Do you know what over his last 7 games? A 77 batting average.
So that's like literally one hit.
It is 2 hits in 26 at bats.
Okay.
2 of 26 with a 107 on base and a 0.77 slugging. His OPS in his last 7 games is under 200.
Oy. That is not the Tim Anderson we know.
Nope.
Not even within the same galaxy. We know he's so much better than that.
It's not like, oh, hey, this is a fluke thing. He's getting worse. This is not the same guy that we've seen over the last several years, or we saw in the WBC.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the real Tim Anderson at that point.
So I can't explain it. I'm not gonna pretend to understand it. It's just it's the reality you're dealing with. You either need to sit him or you need to move him down the order. You got to. If you're trying to win games, you've got to. I mean, even with Tim Anderson being an automatic out in this batting second, you put 7 runs up on the Angels yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the last 2 games of the Angels series, you lose 2 close games so you don't score, and then the bats wake up in the next 2 and you end up splitting.
Yeah, so you absolutely gotta have a better roster construction. And Tim Anderson again tonight batting second.
You might be able to get away with it with shitty Oakland, but when you face tougher opponents.
Yep. Yeah, Benintendi with a White Sox are up 1-0 already in the first. Benintendi with a double. Eloy knocked him in.
Just as we were saying, yeah.
And Tim Anderson struck out. So you got a guy on second, nobody out. Tim Anderson automatic out. Doesn't even move him over.
Yeah, you can't keep having that going forward, for sure.
Nope. You can't do it. So that 0.77 batting order or average in his last 7 is about to get lower. But I don't think there's really anything Bears to talk about.
No, I don't. I've got nothing.
I guess the only little bit of the thing is Chase Claypool was hosting a camp for kids and was still getting criticized about it.
Yeah, well, go figure. I did see, though, the pictures of Darnell Mooney, and wow, he's put on some muscle.
Oh, I know. Yeah, he was pumping iron.
Looks like he could really smash the mightiest Gallagher Way pumpkin with his fist.
Yeah, so we'll have more Bears talk. They've got to. There has to be an edge rusher coming soon. There has to be.
Edge rusher's coming. Edge rusher's coming. Edge rusher's coming. If anybody knows the reference to Camp Krusty, that's referencing Krusty's coming. Krusty's coming. Krusty's coming.
How many pumpkins have we got to sell? Did we have the pumpkin money? Did I get an edge rusher?
Ding Dong George writes in an order with his purple crayon for pumpkins. He's trying to sell them in front of the Hallis Hall, even though nobody from the public goes by it.
Nobody goes by it, and they're not allowed into the property without credentials. And he's still sitting there. Like, the players keep walking by uncomfortably, and they're like, should we buy a pumpkin? And the veterans are like, don't buy a pumpkin. Don't make eye contact.
George is just sitting there with like a little lemonade stand type table. He's got like a little play cash register.
Lil Georgie, LIL with a little apostrophe on there. Lil Georgie pumpkin stand.
Georgie Porgy pumpkins.
He made a grid of his sales with his purple crayon. And just nothing on it. He just drawing pictures of pumpkins. I made a purple pumpkin.
That's great, George.
Kevin Warren is walking by. He's like, that's good. He's like, there's 7 other colors in this crayon box. I only like purple crayons. I eat the rest.
I eat the rest.
Purple's my favorite color to draw in with crayon, but it's my least favorite to eat.
That's why I don't eat it.
That's why I don't eat it. That's why purple became my favorite color.
Doesn't taste like grape.
They just have to go and get him like the 8-pack boxes, like 20 of them, because he just eats the rest of the crayons and he needs all the purples.
That is so disgusting.
I could go grosser, but I'm not. I'm just not gonna do it.
Yeah. I think with that note,
I think that's gonna do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. George with his rainbow poops.
I knew you were gonna say it. I
could not say it.
I knew you were gonna say it.
That's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That will grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski, or at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports. Shy Fan Pad 2 for Alex on Twitter, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.